Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the November 20th Atlanta MSNBC Washington Post debate number 5 and how Andrew Yang decimated every single foe put in front of him. A complete massacre of 8 crocodiles and 1 inferior candidate. So let's talk about it. There's a lot here. This is an these debates are history in the making. You are watching incredible things happening, okay? So let's talk. First, I want to talk about some spanning topics. I want to talk about the event itself, right? So one, tonight was an absolute crocodile frolic, okay? So basically, every single candidate except Andrew Yang and unfortunately except Tom Steyer are politicians. Dyed in the wool crocodiles. Donald Trump talked about draining the swamp, right? Because swamps are where crocodiles live. And D.C., when he got there, was a swamp. Guess what? D.C. is still a swamp. If he's draining it, all he's doing is sucking it up into his own mouth with a straw, right? There's absolutely no draining of the swamp happening. These are all crocodiles. Every single person up there tonight, all of them, right? Like the septuagenarian trinity, BBC, which is, you all know who the septuagenarian trinity is. I don't, I'll give it to you quick. Biden, Warren, Sanders. And BBC, that's Booker, Buttigieg, Klobuchar, and the surfing gavel canary, which is Tulsi Gabbard and Tom Steyer and Kamala Harris, right? All of them, except Tom Steyer, are crocodiles. And boy, did they show their green scaly skin and their crocodile fangs and proof that they are absolute swamp creatures. Like, it was fangs out, green skin, scaly, tails flapping. It was just a complete, absolute crocodile frolic. And what I mean by that is going along on your answers, repeating yourself completely, wasting Americans' time with things you've already said 55 times. Like, just complete and utter, absolute crocodile frolic. And who was feeding the crocodiles was the MSNBC and Washington Post. And this was just a complete indictment of traditional media, right? And the questions were just absolutely horrifically terrible. There was, let me get this in real quick. MSNBC and Washington Post did one thing well. They had 4 all-female moderators. Great change. We haven't seen it before. New, fresh, awesome. Let's do it, right? That's fine. Boy, from there, it was horrendous. One, they opened with the impeachment. Americans do not care about this impeachment, right? Not even the Democrats care about this impeachment. The Democrats are like, you should really care that Ukraine didn't get $400 million in military funding. Now, we're also going to talk tonight about how we should be pulling out of every country can possibly pull out of, right? And how we really need to, make sure that we're not spending a lot of money in other countries. Now, as a Democrat Party, it's really important that we don't give hundreds of millions of dollars to other countries. Now, let's impeach this guy because he didn't give hundreds of millions of dollars to other countries. I'm telling you, they open with impeachment, and here's my suspicion. I believe MSNBC opened with impeachment, right? Because they know Americans do not care about it. Like, not even the Democrats actually care about it, right? And it was used as a sedation to make sure that engaged, intelligent Americans were disengaged from the debate as soon as possible. They also put all the action in the debate at the end, when everybody would be asleep or too bored to stay in, right? Because only political wonks can watch this stuff. I love it. I eat it up. Normal Americans can't touch this stuff. And I think MSNBC was doing a lot to make sure that they wouldn't touch it. There's a lot there. It was horrific. Also, in the debate, MSNBC, back to Warren. Come on, man. Like, you're so bad, right? Last, the worst question of the night, right, was, Yang, why are you qualified to be president? I'm going to interpret that question for you, right? We've had a lot of white presidents, and we've had an African-American president. You're neither one. Why on earth should you be here, right? What kind of question is this? This is absurd. He is a dyed-in-the-wool, awesome, amazing leader who is speaking right to the people and has the momentum of a freight train. How dare they ask him how he's qualified. It's absurd, shocking, frustrating, and incredibly just destructive. I couldn't believe they asked that question. All right, let's get into this. All right, so I'm gonna whip through every single candidate. Right, Yang first because he won. This is in the order of their poll position. Right, podium center position 1. Andrew Yang won tonight without a doubt, crushed it. Right, and then all the way down to P10 poll position. So position 10 is absolutely Tom Steyer. He did horrible. He always does horrible. He's a waste of Americans' time. Whenever he talks, it's crazy. And one thing that was interesting was we learned a few things tonight about Steyer. We're going to talk about that, right? The later I talk about them in this video, the lower they ranked compared to Andrew Yang. All right, I'm going to talk about power lines. Those are powerful lines that they delivered, right? And I'm going to talk about sour lines. These are bad lines that did not land well or made that candidate look worse than they already look now, right? And I'm going to interject notes in there. But before we go forward, right, we're talking about 10 candidates tonight. Yang, 8 crocodiles, and 1 other human being, right? And ironically, Steyer is below the 8 crocodiles. It's crazy. All right, but I want to say this real quick. There are 3 unelectables in here, right? And all the time they spent talking was a complete waste of time because they don't have a chance in heck of getting elected, right? Let's knock them off, okay? Bernie Sanders, he's a Democrat socialist. The news, all news is right now, we have American problems. They are Russian socialists. They are Chinese socialists. They are South American socialists. America has major problems with socialism. Who on earth is going to elect a socialist? Nobody. Sanders is a non-electable candidate. He's fully unelectable. All his words tonight mattered for nothing. Right? Next one, Gabbard, Tulsi Gabbard. Unbelievable politician, smooth as silk, perfect communication, perfect presence, the worst platform possible. Military-industrial complex. I will dismantle it. Hey, all you Americans, does Aunt Sally work at a place where they pay her $250,000 a year? I will rip her job away and millions like hers, and they will be unemployed, and all the most innovative companies in this country, I will dismantle, I will tear them down. You cannot win in America telling Americans you will destroy low millions of incredibly valuable, incredibly important jobs. You can't do it. High-paying jobs. You cannot do it. Non-interventionism, a non-starter for the majority of Democrats, and it is a non-starter for like 99% of all conservatives. Tulsi Gabbard's completely unelectable. All of her words meant nothing. Tom Steyer. This guy, I was upset that he entered the election late. You know what we learned tonight? Thanks to Joe Biden. Oh my gosh, couldn't believe this. Tom Steyer is a climate champion who made millions of dollars funding coal companies. He ended his opening statement saying, "Trust me." I think people are going to have a little bit of time trusting a climate champion who made millions, who spent a large portion of his career funding coal companies. Holy cows! Wow. Like, I couldn't believe there was a lower place to go on my opinion for Tom Steyer. Holy goodness. Wow. All right. Let's get into this. All right. Andrew Yang. Every word he said was gold, and his closing statement was massive. Here's what he said. He called out threats to our nations, military drones, loose nuclear materials. Nobody else is talking about these things, right? Except Yang. He talked about how the U.S. got rid of the Department of Technology in 1995. Killer line. By the way, no sour lines on Yang, all power lines, right? He talked about our kids' education outcome is determined by what happens at home. And that $1,000 a month, the freedom dividend, is real change because it will put $2,000 in most homes or more, right? And that kids will actually have change at home. At home. The freedom dividend changes the home life. It doesn't change the school, right? It will later, but not at first. He's saying, hey, let's look at the real source of the problems. A lot of these problems is that the parents are so stressed with a million problems that freedom dividend will solve, right? And he knocked it out of the park with this. Really drove home the freedom dividend. And he talked about stay-at-home parents, the value of a stay-at-home parent, and how freedom dividend actually makes stay-at-home parents viable, right? He had a great funny line. He said, sorry I beat your guy to Putin, no more, right? Sorry I beat your guy. He said he would say this to Putin, right, when he beats Trump. Very, very funny. And it got a laugh. It was good. He said he did a quote about how he will spend more on diplomats and less on ammunition. Great quote. He called out China to join the international community in fair treatment for people, all people, right? He also, I couldn't believe this, he said he would put pressure on China about what is going on in Hong Kong. Amen, brother, right? Like, Lafayette is still remembered. Thank you, all right? He talked about getting into the roots of communities for men in particular so they do not fall through the cracks and so that men have a path forward, not just hate. The important part here was there are a lot of people who are really hesitant to talk about helping men directly because there's been a lot of focus shifting toward, hey, we need to fix the women problem. So I think there was a lot of courage here for Andrew Yang. I'm hoping people will see the nuance. Anytime you talk about upping men and helping men now, it's very, very dangerous territory. And I'm really surprised Andrew Yang's had the courage to go out there and do it. I trust him. I think he knows what he's doing. Tonight, let's talk about his closing statement. He talked about Evelyn and Christopher and Damien. He named every single person in his family. He did not want to do that, right? But the reason he had to do that is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is running in a race directly after he had a heart attack. You know what you shouldn't do when you just had a heart attack? Run, right? Like Bernie Sanders is risking his life for a single day in the office. He has completely changed what commitment looks like, and that meant that Andrew Yang had to name every member of his family. I hate that he had to do that, but I also like that Andrew Yang's all in. He's like, you cannot break the law, you cannot hurt people. Beyond that, there can be no limits, right? And so he had to do this. He went right in his closing statement, talking about kids. He said the kids are not all right. They have a far darker future. We are headed toward an economic transformation. There is a fourth industrial revolution coming. Technology is going to rip us apart. Immigrants are being scapegoated. And he took all these problems to Washington, and they said they would do nothing. And he had to enter. Great announcement of who he is, what he stands for. He says, I do not fantasize about being president. Oh, right? Who's he talking about there? Steyer and Bloomberg. Yeah, you fantasize. That's what brought you in. We all know it, right? Country, and then he had a great closing line. He's like, this is what I want to say to our children. Your country loves you, your country values you, and you're going to be all right. It's solid. It dropped like an anvil, right? It cut through the floor, right? He crushed his closing statement. And guess what? This is important because the beginning statements were completely shut down. Completely shut down. You know why the beginning statements were shut down? Because you cannot let Andrew Yang off the chain. He will crush these crocodiles. They can't swing like him, right? And they know he is dangerous in the opening and the close. So they took the opening away from him. I'm surprised they didn't shut down. Gets this. They went long. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize this. They went long, which means that the closing statements would be cut off if anybody DVR'd 9 to 11. Ugh. Drives me crazy. I cannot believe it, right? So they gave them their closing statement, but anybody who set their DVR from 9 to 11 would miss Yang's closing statement. MSNBC, I hope these traditional medias, I hope they're fully replaced by new media, by Paget Kagi, Kai Watson, by Nerds for Yang, the whole nine, right? Like, let them go. They're done, right? Like, this whole Yang media blackout thing just continues and continues and continues. It is so frustrating. All right, let's move on. All right, Yang crushed it. Done. All right, let's talk about Buttigieg. He was second tonight. He had a very strong showing. His strongest of the night was Republicans. He said, Republicans that are disgusted with what is happening in Washington, everyone is welcome. Bring it on in, right? Now, he said that directly. You know what's hidden in that statement? Oh, RVW right opponents, come on in. NRA supporters, come on in, right? Like everybody who's like, climate deniers, come on in, because there's a few under the Republicans, right? That is a huge, huge, huge statement. He's saying, I realize we cannot win if we do not get Trump voters. Huge move, huge risk for Buttigieg. I give him the points, man. It was a crushing line, right? He also said, I have felt like a stranger in my own country. Resonated, truthful, right there, right? And like, it was powerful. I got to give him the points, all right? He said, my salvation has to do with how I make myself useful to the marginalized. You don't mention salvation if you ain't going right for evangelical voters. All power lines, all from Buttigieg, right? Now he had some sour lines, but I'm going to keep moving here. I'll come back to him if I have time, but I'm going to keep going. Just hit the power lines from all these other candidates, right? Warren had 2 power lines tonight. Redlining. She talked about redlining. Redlining is a terrible dark mark on our American history. It was a good thing for her to talk about. I'm glad she talked about it. One of my children was here and said, "Oh, I learned about that. I learned about the damage that did." It was powerful that she brought it up. Warren choked up at the end. There was kind of like she got a little bit teary, right? Like, and it was genuine. It felt genuine to me. I think it was genuine, right? And when these people show that they're more than just an automaton, which Andrew Yang is trying to crush, it's good. That was a power line from her. Klobuchar. She had a great line. She said she had got $17,000 from her ex-boyfriend. It was very funny. It landed really well. She said, I won't go for things that sound good on a bumper sticker. Yes, think big. She's like, yes, think big. Be honest about what we can pay for. And she said she was against free college, which is great. That's very pro-Yang. Yang is against free college. I like that. Booker, he had 2 solid power lines tonight. He said, fight gentrification with a tax credit based on how you pay rent. Now, the thing I loved about this was Tom Steyer and Warren were both like, we need to build a lot of government housing, right? And pay billions for it. I don't know if you two have checked American history. Government housing, there's a word that's attached to it, and it ain't a good word, right? Like there is not a lot of examples of government housing that went up and that was like super safe. It worked out well for everybody. No, that's not going to work out, right? So I love that Booker was smart enough not to go down that silly road that both Warren and Steyer just like already way down, right? Harris, she had 1 power line tonight. She said, and again, remember, the lower we go, the worse they did against Yang. She said, too long has the Democrats taken a constituency for granted. They show up in black churches close to election. Where were you the rest of the time? It's a good one. It's absolutely true. Like, there's been a lot of that's been going on. All right, Biden, not a single power line. That poor guy. I feel so bad for him. I don't even have a power line to give you, right? I can give you a couple comments. He looked tired and the smile was gone. I think I saw his smile once or twice peek out, but like in the first three, 4 debates, he would just turn on them high beams, man. His smile would just flash out. He looked tired. He was like, why am I here? And he's right? Bernie Sanders' heart attack belongs to Biden. And the reason why is he's 77 years old, right? And he's a hair's breadth away from it. Or maybe 70. I think Bernie's 77 and Biden is Bernie is 77 and Biden is 76. And they're both doing the same thing. And when you're 76 running pell-mell straight to the wall with everything you got, human bodies break down. This ain't safe. And I think Biden understands it, and it was super clear that he is not happy to be there. Also, all the impeachment stuff, he's right in the middle of it. He had to pivot on an impeachment question that included his son, because his son and him do not look good in that. And the more talk about impeachment, the more it just shines a light that Biden should never been in this race, right? Sanders, he said he will. He did have some power lines. He said he will pull troops out just like Trump. A lot of honesty in that statement. Right? Like saying, hey, we pointed fingers at Trump, saying we wanted to pull, when he pulled troops out recently, but we're all for pulling troops out. What the heck? Like, it was. I love that he showed the ridiculousness of the inconsistency of the Democrat Party. It was very truthful and honest. Impeachment. He said we cannot let Trump's corruption become the focus, which it has totally become, right? Nancy Pelosi saw a long time ago that this impeachment thing was a trap that Trump would absolutely dagger them with and politically dagger them with. And Trump is using this impeachment to crush them. Nobody cares in America that Ukraine was denied $400 million in defense funding. Nobody cares about that, right? Like, people don't even know who Zelensky is. It's complete nonsense, a complete distraction, right? Gabbard. She had two power lines. She talked about Aloha. She talked about 1959 MLK, racial harmony and justice. It was one time where she wasn't talking about dismantling the military-industrial complex, which makes her completely unelectable, right? She talked about that she went at it with Pete. She said Pete would send troops in to fight the cartels, right? And like Pete got all flustered. It was great. I loved it. All right, and then last, Stiers. Oh, not a single power line. That dude has paid millions to waste America's time and dilute the Democrat candidate pool with tired ideas of others. And frankly, at the end of the day, not only did he show up late for the election, he is a climate champion who made millions funding coal companies. It is exactly the type of hypocrisy that people detest in Washington. And so even though he hasn't gotten to Washington, he adopted their hypocrisy before he even got there. Tom Steyer is the worst on that stage. He is the very, very worst. He has no business there. He's burning millions to waste Americans' time. Do not like that guy. All that's my opinion. I want to know what you think. What happened tonight? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.